Ever flown one, honey? That was the first thing the lieutenant said to me. He said it with a grin, slapping the side of the helicopter like it was a horse he owned. His buddy laughed behind him. Neither of them knew who I was. Neither of them knew that in 20 minutes, one of them would be sitting across from me, sweating, waiting to see if I'd let him keep his wings. My name is Captain Dana Voss. I've flown Black Hawks for 11 years, 2 combat tours, and for the last year, I've been an evaluator, the officer who decides whether a pilot is ready to fly on his own, or whether he needs more time before we trust him with a crew's life. That afternoon, I was standing on the flight line in civilian clothes, waiting for my ride-along to start, when 2 young officers decided I was someone's wife looking for a joyride. I didn't correct them. Not yet. Because sometimes the fastest way to learn who a man really is isn't to tell him who you are. It's to let him show you. I'd flown in from another base that morning for a scheduled evaluation. My orders were simple: observe a new lieutenant on his final check ride before he got signed off as pilot in command. No fanfare. No introduction. Evaluators often show up quiet, in plain clothes, and let the unit go about its normal day before the real test begins. I was standing near the hangar, coffee in hand, reading through the lieutenant's training file on a tablet, when he and another officer walked past. He saw me, a woman, in slacks, standing near his aircraft. He didn't see a fellow officer. He saw someone to impress, or maybe someone to brush off. Ever flown one, honey? He said, patting the door of the helicopter like it belonged to him. His friend snorted. Family tours are Saturdays, ma'am. I let it go. I even smiled a little. Not because it didn't sting. It did, after 11 years of proving myself in rooms full of people who assumed the same thing, but because I've learned that the loudest men on a flight line are often the ones who've never had to answer to anyone who could see through them. And in 20 minutes, he was going to answer to me. I walked back toward base operations, still unrecognized, and that's when the flight schedule went up on the board. Every check ride that day was listed: aircraft, crew, and the name of the evaluating officer. I watched him check the board with his buddy, laughing about something else entirely, until his eyes landed on the line with his name on it. Evaluator, CPT Voss. I saw him pause. I saw him glance around the hangar, scanning for a captain he didn't recognize. And then I saw his eyes land back on me, the woman in slacks he'd just called honey 10 minutes earlier. His face changed. Slowly, like a man realizing the ground under him wasn't as solid as he thought. I wasn't angry.
I want to be clear about that.
I wasn't looking for a moment to embarrass him. I've spent my whole career telling myself that respect isn't something you have to fight for, it's something that should already be there. But watching him replay every word he'd just said to me, in real time, on his own face, I won't pretend it didn't feel like justice. I didn't storm over. I didn't make a scene. I finished my coffee, checked my watch, and walked toward the operations desk like nothing had happened at all. This is something I learned a long time ago from an evaluator who trained me back when I was the nervous one standing in front of the board. She told me, never let them see you as reactive. Let your record speak. Let the moment speak. Your job isn't to prove someone wrong. It's to do your job so well that being wrong about you becomes their problem, not yours. So, I picked up my clipboard. I reviewed his flight plan. I checked the weather brief, the maintenance logs, the crew brief. I did exactly what I would have done whether he'd insulted me or held the door open and called me ma'am like he was supposed to. Because that's the difference between real authority and the kind men like him assume they have just by wearing the uniform a little louder than everyone else. Real authority doesn't need to announce itself. It just shows up, on time, prepared, and lets the results speak. At exactly 20 minutes past our first conversation, I walked out to the aircraft with my checklist in hand. Lieutenant, I said, I'm Captain Voss. I'll be your evaluator today. He didn't say a word. His face had gone pale, the kind of pale that comes from realizing you've spent the last 10 minutes digging a hole you now have to fly out of, literally. We walked through the pre-flight brief. His hands were shaking slightly as he pointed to the instrument panel. I asked him standard questions, emergency procedures, fuel calculations, weather minimums, and he answered them correctly, but his voice had lost all of its earlier swagger. The confidence that had let him mock a stranger on the flight line 10 minutes before had evaporated the second he learned that stranger held his career in her hands. We flew the pattern. He handled the aircraft well enough. He was, to his credit, a competent pilot. But competence in the cockpit and character on the ground are two different things, and I was grading both. Halfway through the ride, doing a simulated emergency procedure, he made a mistake. A small one, the kind that happens under pressure, the kind I'd seen 100 times from pilots twice his experience. It wasn't the mistake that told me who he was.
It was what he said next.
"I'm sorry, ma'am. That was my error, not yours." No excuses. No blaming the wind, the aircraft, or bad luck. Just a plain acknowledgement. And in that one sentence, I saw something shift in him. The same shift I'd been hoping to see since he first slapped that door and called me honey. We landed, shut down, and walked back into operations in silence. I finished my paperwork. He passed his check ride. His flying was solid, and I don't let personal feelings decide who earns their wings. That's not what evaluators do. That's not what fairness looks like. But before I signed the final form, I looked at him. "You asked me if I'd ever flown one," I said. "The answer is yes. 11 years, 2 deployments, and a few hundred check rides just like this one." I paused. "Next time you meet someone on the flight line you don't recognize, Lieutenant, assume they know more than you, not less. You'll be right more often than you think." He nodded, and for the first time all day, he looked me directly in the eye instead of past me. "Understood, ma'am. It won't happen again." I believed him, not because of what he said, but because of how he said it, like a man who'd just been handed a lesson he wasn't going to forget. Word travels fast on a flight line. By the next morning, the story wasn't really about me. It was about him, and about the lesson every new pilot on that base quietly absorbed. You don't know who's standing next to you in civilian clothes. The quiet stranger reading a tablet by the hangar might be the person who signs off on your entire career. A few weeks later, I heard secondhand that he'd started introducing himself properly to every visitor on the flight line, whether they were in a flight suit or street clothes. Small change. But it's the kind of change that matters, because respect that's only given to people who look the part isn't respect at all. It's just decoration. I've thought about that day a lot since then. Not because I needed the apology. I'd made peace with comments like his a long time before I ever met him. But because it reminded me of something important. You rarely need to defend yourself against people who underestimate you. You just need to keep doing the work, quietly, competently, and let the moment of truth arrive on its own schedule. He thought he had 20 minutes before his check ride started. He didn't realize his check ride had already begun the moment he opened his mouth. If you've ever been underestimated by someone who had no idea what you were capable of, let me know in the comments. And if this story reminded you that quiet confidence always outlasts loud arrogance, hit subscribe. There's more where this came from.